Today we have a real treat. Now, the game is a game of Alexander Alekhine's, but the story behind it is quite interesting. I was having dinner with some friends recently, and one of my friends, who's a very strong chess player, a FIDE master, brought up the fact that a number of people have accused Alexander Alekhine of inventing some of his games, or at the very least, inventing the end of the games to make them look more spectacular than they actually were. Now, of course, at that time, you didn't have ChessBase, you didn't have the internet. There was no way of really verifying how accurate the game score was. And he pointed out, my friend did, this particular game is one of the games some people have had real doubts about in terms of its authenticity. And I must say, this game is beyond belief. It really is spectacular. So I'm going to ask you, the viewer, because I don't know the answer to this question, to tell me, put in the comments section, do you think that Alekhine doctored the score of this game a little bit to make it look more spectacular than it was, or not? Let's jump right in. Alekhine has white. His opponent, depending on the source, is either NN or not known. There is one source, however, that does give a name of an Nikolai Grigoriev, but I'm a little bit skeptical of that source. Let's just assume it's not known for the time being. And the occurrence was 1915 in Moscow. That's all we know. So Alekhine begins with e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, and knight to f6, a classical French. Bishop to g5, and here black plays bishop to b4, the McCutcheon variation. Now this is known as a very, very sharp response to the French defense for both sides. Usually, the board gets sort of cut down the middle, and each side white plays on the king side, black plays on the queen side. e5. This looks like it might win a piece at first because there's a pin here, but black does not lose a piece. He plays h6 and counterattacks that bishop. The main move here is just bishop to d2, bishop to e3 often is played. But here Alekhine plays pawn takes knight, which leads to very sharp and interesting play. Black, of course, takes the bishop, otherwise he'd be down a piece. Alekhine takes on g7, now rook to g8. Now, obviously, if black is able to comfortably recover this pawn at g7, he would just be up a pawn and be better. He has a nice, healthy structure. He would just be better. So Alekhine had this idea in mind, h4. The idea is to clear this g file so that he can defend the pawn with the queen. So after pawn takes pawn, obviously black would love to play queen f6 and win the pawn that way. Queen to g4 is played by Alekhine. And here, probably best was queen to f6, and you have a fairly equal position after that. But his opponent plays a much more aggressive idea. He plays bishop to e7, wanting to hold on to this pawn and then play the bishop to f6 and take with the rook. So this is a very aggressive idea from black. But Alekhine's next move must have come like a cold, bucket of water. He plays g3. Looks simple enough, but the threat, of course, is to open up the h file and get this rook involved. It's help to support the g7 pawn. If black takes on g3, then rook to h8. Obviously, the rook is pinned, so really the next move would be forced, king to d7, but then queen to h5, aiming at the f7 pawn. Your knight c6, rook takes, queen to h8, and you can see there's really nothing black can do to survive. White is going to end up winning after queen takes queen and pawn takes queen. So instead of taking the pawn at g3, black counterattacks in the center with c5. It's a standard French idea anyway, but white does not back down. Alekhine takes on h4 with the pawn, obviously with the idea of eventually connecting these pawns, and black takes on d4, threatening the knight. And you would think white would want to move that knight, but instead Alekhine says nope, and he just marches forward, h5, threatening h6, h7. Black takes the knight, h6, pawn takes b2, attacking the rook at a1, so rook to b1. But now queen to a5 check. This was the idea for black, weakening these dark squares. Not only is he delivering check, but he's also threatening the a2 pawn, which could cause a lot of trouble attacking white's rook. King to e2, and modern engines tell us that the best move for black here is queen to a6 check. and that the best white has is to just allow a perpetual, that to try to win that would be too dangerous. But we won't get into those lines. Black does not do that. He plays a much more obvious move, queen to a2, attacking the rook. But that gives Alekhine the time he needs to attack. h7, queen takes b1, pawn takes rook, check. So now we have 3 queens on the board, as you can see. 2 for white, 1 for black. The king goes to d7, queen takes f7. White has serious threats, obviously threatening the pawn at e6 as well as queening his own pawn. But black takes on c2 with check, king to f3, and now knight to c6. So what if black goes ahead and queens here? Well, in that case, queen g e6, queen f e6, excuse me, king to c7, queen to g3 check, king d8, and then you just promote to a queen, and it would be mate in this position with 3 queens for white and 2 queens for black. So because of that, black plays knight to c6 to give his king a way to hide and to protect the bishop at e7. So queen g takes e6 with check, king goes to c7 trying to escape, queen to f4 check, and obviously if he goes back here, had the same kind of result with the queening and leading to a quick mate. So the king goes to b6. But it looks like it might have found safety over here. We'll see. Queen e to e3 check, bishop to c5 to block the check and attacking the queen. White promotes to a queen here. Black promotes to a queen. So in this position, we have 5 queens total on the board. And you can see why people have been suspicious of Alekhine's game here, that he might have doctored this to look even more spectacular. I can't remember a game of a Carlsen or a Kasparov or a Fischer that looked like this. I will be honest with you about that. Alekhine's next move is very strong. Rook to h6, pinning the knight at c6. Here, black has a few options. Actually, bishop to g4 check keeps black in the game. After queen g4, obviously the rook is threatening the queen, so that queen would be the piece to recapture the bishop. Bishop takes e3, and in this position, black is still fighting. White is a bit better, but the game is not over yet in that position, believe it or not. If black takes on e3 immediately, then queen to d8 check, king c5, then this nice little move, queen takes d5 check, sacrificing the queen, but then queen to d6 would be checkmate. So black instead takes the bishop on f1, which makes a lot of sense. You're getting a piece, but you're also putting your queen in a position where it can go back to b5 and help shelter your king. So that makes a lot of sense. Queen to b4 from Alekhine. Notice both pieces that could capture the queen are pinned. The bishop at c5 is pinned by the e3 queen. The knight at c6 is pinned by the h6 rook. So the queen comes back to b5 to block the check. But now this move, queen to d8 check, and the knight at c6 cannot take it because it's pinned. In fact, if you look, it's quite interesting. The knight at c6 is actually forking those 2 queens, but it does not matter because he is pinned by the rook at h6. The king goes to a6, and now queen e to a3 check. And after queen c to a4, look at this completely unreal, unbelievable position. Really, really spectacular, and obviously it is a quick mate. After queen takes a4 check, black resign because of queen a4, queen takes a4, and that is mate. The knight cannot even interpose because of the pin by the rook. So, certainly a game for the books. Was it made up or was it real? Well, I'll let you decide. Thank you for joining us at Chess Dog. See you again soon.